Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the Wicked Weekly. My name is Brian, if you happen to be new around here, and in today's video, we've got some exclusive and some breaking news. Thomas and I got to sat down and we got to talk about so much, not only with Patch 1, which you'll learn the name of Patch 1 here in the interview. I won't spoil it for you in the intro. I'll let you enjoy. Maybe we'll title the video so that this could all be just completely pointless. But regardless, you're going to get some of that. We're going to talk about a lot about the job system and so much more. I really hope that you enjoy this. Please go get a drink. Please treat this as a podcast. There is a lot here, a lot of new information, a lot of really refined information. And all of that being said, I really do hope you enjoy. If you do, please do me a favor. That like button will be a really great way of helping out the content and the channel. Also, if you are not subscribed, consider subscribing to the channel for more of this kind of content. Also, huge shout out to the 402 of you guys who have subscribed over the last 28 days. So you are making a wonderful dream possible, and I do appreciate you guys all for that support. Now, without further ado, let's dive in and let's talk about the future of No Rest for the Wicked. Hello, everyone, and thank you so much for joining us here. Brian and Thomas back together again after a little bit of a break. You've been busy working on the Breach update. I've been busy playing your latest Breach update. A man who needs no introduction to this community. Thank you so much, Thomas, for taking time out of your busy schedule. Hopefully I'm not delaying any patches because I'm taking up a little bit of your time today, but we got a lot to talk about. Before we get into it though, I want to open up just this interview right to you. Is there anything that you want to share with the community who's just really excited for Patch 1 and the multiplayer update specifically?
I would just recap real quick, right? Yeah. Because I'm always like now very cautious of what I'm saying because everything gets blown out of proportion on the internet and so on. So basically what happened here, right, was that, hey, we released the Breach and we were super proud of what we shipped. I think if you look at it now, right, and so on, it's really good content. Good. And the steps that we made forward, I think are just really nice, right? When we originally shipped, the problem that we had is that I just was crazy and wanted to cram as much content as possible in, right? Simply because
I get it.
On the very first release, we had the major criticism was, oh, we want more content, right? So my head was in, I want to cram more and more content in, right? So I didn't do as much playtesting towards the end. And that was a mistake. Like I should have tested the crap out of it towards the end, right? But then I saw, oh, yeah, people have some trouble with this or that, or there's some balance off and so on, right? So then we released our hotfixes. Like we did that pretty quickly, right? We released like one hotfix, like a day, 2 days later or something, right? And then yet another one and another one. And then we ended up with 4 hotfixes. I think with the 4 hotfixes, we're now in a pretty good spot. The Steam reviews actually turned around, right? Like we started at 35% and like people hated some stuff. And now we're at 90 or something, right? We were up to 91. And that's really nice. But now, like the other thing that we've been working on, obviously is, well, we are doing a lot of work on the multiplayer co-op update, which a ton of people, like I hear you.
Oh man, yeah.
I know a lot of people are waiting for that, right? They're just waiting for the moment when multiplayer happens so they can, share all of that. And we're working super hard on that. But then the other thing that we wanted to do is just in the typical Moon Studios fashion, we did there 4 hotfixes, but there were still some bigger features that people talked about, right? Like, hey, can you guys change the way fast travel works? And for some people, like we had a lot of people that reach out regarding difficulty, so that even with the tweaks that we made, the difficulty was still too insane for them, or they have accessibility issues, right? Some people have issues with like, hey, I can't use my hand properly and so on, and the game is just too hard. Can you guys do something about that? So we wanted to do one more really big patch that takes care of those things, right? And really looks at it broadly and like really looks at all the feedback. Like I've literally, like we went through, I think every single Reddit post, every single thing on our forums, on our Discord, like we read everything, right? And so we basically just copy pasted all of that into our stuff. We summarized it, right? And then we had, okay, here's the things that we want to tackle, right? That are the most immediate needs. And so that's basically what this upcoming patch that we'll release represents, right? It's basically us doing a really big fat community update, where it's just, hey, so you guys have asked for this, we'll give you exactly what you want, but we're still the moderators of this, right? Like, we can't give it to you, like, oftentimes not exactly how you want it, right? Like, if you're telling us, hey, copy the Estes system from Dark Souls or so, right? If it doesn't click with what you're building, we can't do that. But we have to get to the intention behind what have you guys actually, like, why are you asking for that? Let's fix that issue that presents itself. So that's basically where we are right now. Like, we are preparing that big fat patch 1 that will change the game dramatically, but I think in really, really cool ways. So I've been playing the patch 1 update for almost 2 weeks now, right? And we've been polishing and going crazy on it. There's so many new features. It's going to be quite interesting to see how people will react to it.
Now, we're all still calling it patch 1, but you've also teased that you might give the patch its own special kind of name. Mathematically, in terms of like this year to last year, my mind is like, I've been kind of thinking of patch 1 as not necessarily is it going to be like the Crucible update, but in terms of like, you made the Crucible update last year in response to a lot of the feedback that you guys were seeing from the initial launch. And that's where I was like, I think I really enjoyed the Crucible update. And I do want to say thank you for bringing XP back to the Crucible with the breach. That has made my enjoyment of the game so much better, because it gives me many different avenues to kind of tackle the thing that I'm kind of chasing, for example. But could you share the name or the idea of the name here, or if not, it's okay.
I mean, we're still bouncing it around a little bit, but yeah, let's share it. I mean, the current name that we are thinking about is just calling it the Breach Refined.
Ooh, okay. Yeah.
That's the idea, that we're basically saying, look, we really are proud of the content that we shipped with the Breach. And marketing wise, we just wanted to kind of like get away from the 1 and 1.0 thing, right? Because we already said 1.0 is basically usually represents this is when the game is final, right? So we want to not have
quite a bit of confusion. I've been in the Discord and also in the comment section of the videos being like, okay, guys, we got to patch 1. That's something different. 1.0, like let's separate these mentally. And I think it's going to be good that you're going to slap a name on it, and putting kind of naming patches ends up giving it a good marketing, at least more eyeballs onto it. It's like, oh yeah, now we're talking about this update.
So it makes it a little bit easier to discuss, right? Because then we would have, the next update, the co-op update, and then co-op also has a patch 1 and so on, right?
Exactly.
So if you name it nicely, I think it makes the whole terminology and so on, everything just simpler to communicate. That's the idea. But yeah, that's what's coming out pretty soon.
That's the thing. It's like, you don't have to share the date, but you shared on Discord that the Steam Summer Sale might be a really good opportunity for marketing in this kind of update. So I think anybody who's listening to this could probably put 2 and 2 together and have at least a decent release window to prepare, which is great, because I'm gonna be taking some time off work for patch 1, and especially for multiplayer. So as soon as you don't have to give me anything privately behind the scenes, but I will be taking some time, some PTO.
We are starting this now, by the way. So even before the Breach Refined comes out, we will have some community members that have a lot of hours spent in the game and so on, right?
Morgath.
We will have them, we will have them already be able to play and give us feedback and so on, right? Simply because we want to basically avoid what happened during the Breach, right? Like, we want to have as much players as possible already in there, and if there's some stuff that is too difficult or something, then like, that should probably pop up.
Yeah, I've always told
that's the shitty thing with ARPGs, right? Like, literally, dude, it's so crazy how, like, you can adjust like 4 little numbers and boom, the entire game flows up, right? It's just wow.
I think it's game development anyway. Like, it's like anytime you have to recompile the code, it's like always just like, well, okay, oops, didn't see that was connected to this thing. That's why I always kind of tell the guys, like, when it comes down to it, it's like, I never find the bugs in my own code. I never find the issues, because it's like my brain always was like, oh, this is how this works. I know how this works. I designed it. And then essentially when you said that on Discord, I was like, that's actually a really good sign. Getting more eyeballs that are able to kind of really put some time into it, test it out, makes it better for everybody. And that's also kind of like when I recommend this game out to, like, for early access, I'm like, guys, like, this is kind of a fun journey, because one thing that Moon Studios, I think, really does well, to y'all's credit, is you said you listen to the feedback, the Reddit, the Discord. and you back that up by action. That's not you just saying it. Like, we see it happening every single release, every single update. And that's one of the things that I feel kind of confused by, and maybe you feel the same way, is that when people say y'all don't communicate enough, I know that I feel communicated to, but then again, I'm hyper fixated on every little thing you say. So it's like, there's that, but
I think there is some validity to that statement too, right? Because we're still like, we're a small studio, and this is the first time we release kind of a live service thing, right? Which it became because of the update stuff. It's not supposed to be a real full live service MTX kind of thing, but the thing that we're not really good at yet is like consolidating everything, right? Every crazy idea, and then, oh, here's a fully marketing and HR approved statement that we release on every single social media platform and so on, right?
Yeah.
With us, you still have to kind of like follow the game a little bit, right? And like understand, like, or watch you basically summarize it, right? Like, that's why we're super appreciative of what you're doing, because you're basically looking at, oh, here's all the news and information, and you make a really nice video that explains it, and it's like, oh, that is fantastic, because that makes our job so much easier.
Somebody on Discord said, to jump in on that, like, they were like, Ginger Prime said that one point, and I was like, no. Like, I have to be very careful that I was like, that I'm not out there like, oh yeah, you know, Brian was saying this stuff. I was like, but I responded to him. I was like, no, because they were talking specifically about the job system, and I'm calling it the job system. I'm sure, you know, y'all come up with a fun name for
it. I do too.
You said that on a post. I was like, we've got it locked in, boys. Let's go. Before, I would like to talk to you a little bit about that, because you went and put a detailed post out on the official site. Really got me excited. You've kind of teased those ideas well before. So anybody who's been following the game, it's like you've praised the Final Fantasy VII materia system. You and I both share the Final Fantasy Tactics, like, probably the best Final Fantasy game ever released, and we got just this.
I love that they're putting out another like remake and so on of Final Fantasy Tactics, right? Because like, that's finally more people will be able to experience it. Because like, honestly, I think Yasumi Matsuno is one of the unsung heroes in the industry, right? Like, he's one of the, wow, that guy did some genius work and was really underappreciated, and then just went away, right? Like, I don't know what he's doing now, but it's a shame that he's not, you know, as popular anymore in the games industry, or didn't get chances to make more stuff. You know?
Yes, 100% agreed. My question to you, especially about with the remake, where are you going to play it? Are you going to play it on the Switch 2? Or are you going to play it on Steam? Like, do you have a preference? Because I've kind of gone back and forth. I'm like, I just picked up my Switch 2, and there's some really great stuff that's going on with the Switch 2 that I really wish the Switch 1 has done. But do you have a preference on where you might pick up the remake for Tactics?
I love the Switch 2 as a platform and what it is. We obviously also looked at it now in terms of development, right? I've been in touch with Nintendo before, even before the Switch launch, regarding what the Switch 2 is and how we could support that for No Rest for the Wicked. There's a bunch of things that they're doing that I think are very interesting, that I think most people are probably not going to make use of. Especially the stuff with the game chat and game sharing. I think for Wicked could be really interesting because the way our co-op works. And then also because of the way local co-op usually works on consoles, right? There's some stuff that they're doing with the game sharing that could be super interesting. But I don't want to spill the beans on that yet, because
stay tuned for later, guys. I'm excited.
Yeah. So that's really interesting. In terms of like the platforms themselves, I play my Steam Deck a whole lot.
Okay.
Like, I love my Steam Deck, but usually I just switch between them, right? When there's something on the Switch 2, I play my Switch 2. And I love a lot of the stuff that they did about the Switch 2. And as a platform, it already is really interesting.
So another platform that we just saw announced semi is the Xbox ROG Ally that Microsoft detailed, which would support Steam, which would actually run No Rest for the Wicked, on an Xbox, not I guess an official capacity. But do you have any takeaways from that announcement? Is that something that you like? Because y'all put a lot of work in getting Steam Deck, making it run, and I play on the Steam Deck as well. And I think especially going into the breach, like, I feel the performance improvement like with every release.
Yeah. Oh, and there's a lot more coming regarding that, right? Like, there's a big update that we've been sitting on, which is that we that should help especially with low-end hardware, and we're trying to get that in as soon as possible. Which, like, in the game right now, we're rendering all the geometry kind of like as is, right? But we we've long worked on kind of like proxies, basically, meaning that, hey, the stuff in the distance kind of like gets switched out to lower res versions that you barely won't see because we have DOF anyway and fog and so on, right? But that dramatically helps performance on Steam Deck and so on. It's just, there's still some work required to just make that work perfectly. Regarding the ROG Ally thing and so on, I've actually, like half a year ago or so, I had an email thread going with Phil Spencer because I saw this, right? Like the whole, dude, if they release SteamOS and, like Microsoft doesn't do anything, right? Like,
what are you doing?
I could easily see lots of players, like when they put a gaming PC together, to just put SteamOS on it, right? And like, why would you at that point still put on it? Because let's be honest, right? Like, how many gamers have Office installed and so on, right? Barely anybody. And now you have this whole thing with like the Dave 2D video where he basically showed, oh my God, the games on SteamOS run even like 20% faster than on Windows and so on, right? So they have to do something. I do think that Microsoft is in an interesting position though, right? Because especially, and I think Phil gets that, and I think Matt Booty and so on, right? They get that they have a pretty powerful position if they make a handheld or some device that just has all the stores combined, everything, right? Where I could play all my Xbox games from all the generations, everything, all the Steam stuff, everything, right? To own that openness of the PC platform, right? To not like to basically go away from the closed platforms and just say, it's a PC, it's open, you can do whatever you want with it, right?
That's what made Microsoft, because you look at like everything, like my PC.
That made them a success, right? And that's the thing that when Jobs came back to Apple back then, right? Like his whole mantra was Apple forgot who Apple was, right? And what made them successful. And I think to some degree that might be true for Microsoft, right? Like the thing that made Microsoft successful was that, hey, you could run Windows and DOS and so on every single platform, right? On every single computer, right? And so I think there's a really interesting analogy there with like, just create a really open platform, let players do what they want to do, right? And just give them all the power in the world and just optimize the shit out of it, right? And by the way, you're Microsoft, you could subsidize that hardware, right? Because if people use your thing, then they will buy stuff from the whatever Microsoft stores and so on anyway, right? And that's a thing that Valve probably won't do, right? Like they could subsidize the hardware a little bit. I'm guessing they did that with the Steam Deck, right? But they couldn't do it to the degree that
Microsoft could
right?
do, for sure, yeah.
I just want to see competition, right? I don't want to see Valve having a monopoly, right? I don't want to see Nintendo having a monopoly. I don't want to see Xbox having a monopoly. We are always in the best spot if they all have to compete. And they're all, like, oh my God, if you don't create amazing content, we're gonna get screwed, right? Because that ultimately then the gamer wins, right? And so that's what needs to happen. Like they all need to be there. I do see a lot of kind of like the fanboys being like, oh, wouldn't it be great if Microsoft would go away and so on, right? It's like, no, that would actually be really shitty, for the industry. If one of the big players just, kind of like goes away, right? Like that sends a really bad signal for our whole industry, right? That it's just, this is not good. And what you would want to see is just tons and tons of competition. Like, and everybody just shooting for who gets the top spot. And how do we get there? Well, through amazing content and amazing experiences.
Yeah, competition means that we win. That's why like their move more to play anywhere has been a real boost for me. So if a game comes out, play anywhere, which is Xbox, PC, cloud, etc., I'm like, oh, I'll buy it there. Otherwise, I'll buy it on Steam. And in this case, I think just because I love tactics so much that my plan is I'm going to probably buy multiple copies of the game just to support and be like, please make this. They have Advanced and Advanced 2 off on, the GBA way back in the day, and we've never seen anything follow up that. Maybe this is the dream that we can see all those coming around. But I do want to spend some time picking your brain because I've seen some concern, especially when you've talked about the job system and moving away from attributes. And I've tried within the comments and in the content that I make to kind of talk about, like, it's just the unknown that people are afraid of because people like the freedom of attributes. But I go, realistically, you have the data, and you shared that like people are making some really odd choices that are making their experience actually much more benign. And one example would be is that picking up weapons. You made a change where you can still use it regardless of hitting the requirement, but you're not getting that power scaling with the weapons. And I go, yeah, I end up basically making different characters to try out different weapons because I hyper focus in on one stat over anything else, so I can be as powerful as I can be.
Yep.
That's why when you started talking about the job system, I got even more excited because it kind of frees up that responsibility of stat allocation, because like in tactics, you could change your job at any point. And then the progression is all about unlocking abilities. Can you share more with us, like kind of your vision for what
that is exactly what we're doing. So as a game designer, right, and as a designer in general, you always have to look at it not just from what existed before and that kind of thing, but you really have to understand the underlying system and like, how did we get there? Why is this still used? Does this still have is there a better way to design, and is there, could we give players just a better, or users generally, a better experience with a different system where you either need to add complexity or remove complexity and that kind of thing, right? If you look at the attribute system, I mean, the attribute systems in RPGs in general, right, have been there for a long time, right? Mm-hmm. The typical argument that I see is that, well, Souls has been using it for 15 years, right? Mm-hmm. So it must be good, right? And that's a pretty flawed argument, right? Because you're not playing Souls games because of the attribute system, because of the leveling experience, right?
Yeah.
That's not the thing that makes it addictive. The reason why you play Souls games is because the combat is super fun, the level design is amazing, the bosses are super fun, that kind of thing. But the actual like, oh my God, I leveled, now I can put 2 points into strength, right? And 1 point into health. That's not the most interesting experience that you could have, right? At least like that's how I see it, right? Because the thing that I think Yasumi Matsuno already hit on, right, when he made that thing, is that it should be feature based, because features are really what your brain focuses on, right? Like if I have, I leveled up, now I can finally buy a thing where I can walk on water, right? Mm-hmm. That's a way different and cooler way to play than just, now I have 3% more health, 1% more stamina, and 5% more attack power, right? And that's the kind of thing that this system will basically do and allow, right? It will change things, like it will, there's this whole thing of like your weapon basically defines you, right? Mm-hmm. Like, so hey, if I pick up a katana, what is happening with the class system, or with the job system, is that if you now defeat enemies with the katana and deal hits and so on, right, then you're automatically leveling up the ninja class, let's say, right? Mm-hmm. Because you are using the katana and that's it, right? Like, or the samurai. And Wakizashi right now is ninja. And that gives you that ability to say, okay, like I'm moving away from really minor upgrades to really class-specific features, right? And it's all, instead of just having the leveling experience, is about not really tangible rewards, right? Because frankly, I don't care how good you are in math, right? Like these little, okay, now I have 5% more health and 2% more attack damage and so on. It's not tangible, right? It's not a really big thing, right? But then if you have, oh my God, I leveled up, right? Now I can buy this particular feature and then I can equip it on my character. Mm-hmm. And that feature is very specific, right? That makes a huge change. That's a big, like, wow. And you can see that, like, and if you play Final Fantasy Tactics and so on, you can see that, well, that was a better approach. They even like refined that system and did more with like Final Fantasy 11 and then Final Fantasy 14 and so on, right? And there's a reason why they stuck with that, right? There's, and those systems can be really addictive, right? Like I even, when I researched regarding the class system and so on, I played Final Fantasy Tactics again, and once again, I just got stuck till I had every single class mastered, right? And every single ability bought and so on. And that opens up some really cool stuff, right? Mm-hmm. Like that opens up some really unique things. And then there's things that we could do that, like to advance that even further, right? Like, okay, now let's think about ascendancies, right? Like, I need to have this class mastered and this class mastered. And then opens up this other class that opens up whole new abilities and whole new ways of playing. but you first need to figure that out and so on, right? So that's basically where all of this is going. I think it's going to be a huge change, but it's not that big in terms of like the internal systems that we have, like the under the hood stuff, because we already have all the attribute stuff. We're basically just switching that to, well, dex int now means this, right? And strength means this, and strength and faith now becomes knight, right? And so on, that kind of thing. So I don't think it's as big a change as people suspect it is. But I think just in terms of presentation and in terms of clarity and in terms of like looking forward to the level up and making that really addictive, I think that'll majorly help. And the huge issue that we're always seeing with attribute systems is that whether you like it or not, people come in with preconceived notions, right? Like we saw so many players that, and even streamers that played for 40 hours or something, right? That complained like, I already put 40 points into dex and I'm not attacking any faster. And it's just, yeah, that's not how this system was built, right? And there's this, and there's nothing you can do about it. Like people just assume, like, hey, if I put more points into this, then this will happen. But by the way, every single fucking game handles this differently, right? In Souls, dex means this. In Fallout, dex means another thing, and so on, right? And it's just, there's not really a standard, but people automatically assume that certain things must be true. The reason why we did not, the reason why we did not do the thing of, hey, if you put points into strength, into dex, that also increases your attack speed or something, right? Is because once you actually do that and you see how people play, now you will see, now you give players even more rope to hang themselves with to create even shittier builds, right? Because now you'll have, oh, here's a mage guy, right, who wanted to play mage and he wanted to attack fast. So he put a shit ton of points into dex. And now he doesn't have as many points as he needs into int, right? And now he kind of like screwed himself and now he has to go to respec, right? And all of that. And you have, this is the problem always that you have with attribute systems, right? That it basically like either you follow that guide or you basically know what to do. And if not, like if you screwed yourself up, you got to respec and then reallocate those points, right? And then there's this really interesting thing where I was actually ranting against what was his name? The initial game designer for Diablo 3, Jay something. I forgot. But he came to a similar conclusion, but his resolution was, oh, we're just going to remove ability points, and we're just going to allow you to completely immediately respec everything, right? And just change and that means, well, now you don't have a build anymore.
There's no,
but you still want a build.
There's no choices.
There's no choice anymore. There's no nothing, right? Like it's just, and that was really dumb, I thought, right? Like that was really like, well, I was really proud of building my Hammered in Diablo 2. And then in Diablo 3, if somebody had a good build, you could literally click 5 buttons and boom, you had that build, right? And it's just, but that is crappy, And then the only way that, in the in end game, how you could actually change your character was, okay, now you need to grind Paragon. But then the problem that you always have with Paragon is, oh shit, now I have to grind 20 hours to get a 0.02% upgrade in this or that, right? And it's just, yeah, that allows you to grind forever, but then also the reward is garbage, right?
I think
it's just
regarding Paragon, because I've made this case, and especially like MMOs, you brought up Final Fantasy 14, for example, is that I think that in terms of Paragon, the best systems that appeal to me is systems that Paragon is literally for bragging rights. Like it's like just how you can change your look. It has no power progression to it at all. And it's there for people who want it. Like you want, oh, how did you get that cool color on that wand? Oh, well, it turns out like you go use wands for, another 1,000 hours and you haven't. So it's just, okay, it doesn't make you essentially a better player or somebody who has better stats than anybody else. And that's where it's fun. Cause like, I like those kind of systems. Cause I hate when XP becomes useless. Like whenever XP just hits the floor and has no value, I'm like, oh, bummer. Like, I'm sure there's something that this could be used for. And that's where like, yeah, I'm pro Paragon, but I'm not pro power Paragon, because
I'm the same as you in terms of like the player style, I think, right? Like I also always have this thing where it's like once a game shows me the credit screen, it basically tells me, okay, we're done, right? Like you saw everything there is to see, right? And like I even had this sensation with the last Animal Crossing game, right? Where I was playing it with my son and so on, and then I had the guy come to town and sing a song, and then the credit screen rolled, and that immediately, for some reason, psychologically gave me this effect of like,
oh, I beat it.
wait, this is a sandbox, but you now basically played the credit rolls, so it's over, that kind of thing. And even though I know it isn't, right, and there's even more stuff, and then you get the customization, for some reason I just stopped playing, right? And so I very much hear you on that, right? But the way I want to solve it is just want to make it like so that I just give you a ton of variety, right?
Yeah.
Like just maxing out your character with like 1 or 2 or 3 classes. Well, you will do that, with the campaign itself, right?
Mm-hmm.
But then, oh shit, there's 40 classes, right?
Right.
So if you want more variety, if you want to, like, if you played a strength build, right? Like some knight or something, right? Then you could switch to spell sword, right? And then, okay, now you finish the campaign, but you only mastered 2 classes. Mm-hmm. And now it's like, oh, let me look into katanas, right? And now I basically still have a shit ton to do. And then, oh, now I want to try a pyromancer, and let's try this, right? And now I want to do this. That's how I want to solve it. So at some point, there will still be an end, right? So meaning you could potentially master every single class, but the chance that you will do that, right? That it just
thousands
takes a
of
long,
hours,
long,
right?
long
Like,
time.
It's a big investment.
It will take a long time, but still, like, it keeps you in the game, right? It will keep you, like, it will still mean like, hey, you have new stuff to explore, new things to find, new abilities to get that you never saw before. And the cool thing with the class system is you can mix and match, right? So you can literally do things like, okay, so I'll get the blink ability from the mage, and now I can use it on my knight because that's a trait, and I can, I can shuffle traits around and so on. And so that automatically then creates this really interesting aspect of, well, we laid out these classes for you. Here's how they play, right? And that's the other nice thing that this does, is that automatically, by the way it's designed, it will show you how many items and so on exist in the game, right? Because here's the ability for this. In order to get this, you need to use this item, right? So that automatically in your head creates the side quest of, oh, I don't have the this particular katana yet, right? The Wind of Death or something, right? And it has this really cool move. So now I have to get this particular katana to learn this move, and like to basically master my class. And then that's cool, right? Like, it does all of that. Like, it will basically show you exactly, well, here's all this stuff. You can master all of it. But on top of that, it's the whole, oh, but wait, like, they have these 40 classes, but what if I combine this with this, with this, and suddenly you create your own thing, right? And that's the cool thing. And by the way, none of that you could do with just your traditional attribute system.
Correct.
Right? Simply because attribute system means numbers go up, but not ever can I change various features, right? Can I mix this with that and so on? Like, that isn't really the case.
So would you say changing your job when this update does go live? And just for context, my budgeting of time, I think of the Combat 2.0 update that you've talked about in terms of y'all's internal roadmap, that and honestly also I've said if I'm giving people out fake information, please correct me any which way. But that I also have said that, I would expect it maybe around the Combat 2.0 update, but maybe not all the jobs would make Combat 2.0, because we could save some for 1.0 or some that kind of roll out over time, because 40 jobs, no offense, that's a lot of work.
Keep in mind though, right? It's not as crazy as it might sound, because literally we are mapping things like, strength only becomes this job. Strength dex becomes this job. Strength int becomes this job, right? That's basically what it is, right? And so a bunch of the stuff is already there. We just need to kind of like represent it differently, because it's also that, right? Like, just what is a strength faith build, right? And if we present it that way, right, then you don't have to ask that question anymore, right? Like, it'll just be super clear, right? Like, hey, it's
already there.
A class that is this and plays this way and uses this weapon archetype, and here's how you play it efficiently, and that's it.
So would you say that switching your job would be as simple as like changing your weapon, or are you thinking that there's going to be a UI screen that you're like, oh, I'm going to play this?
No, that's how it works. So basically, the problem that we have right now, right, and it's kind of annoying, is that right now, whenever you find a new weapon, you're like, oh, that's cool. But then it's like, okay, most likely you get weapon requirement not met, right?
Right. That's
because you're making a strength build, and this weapon scales with faith, right? So, and in something like Final Fantasy Tactics, they literally have, after a battle and so on, you can change your job, right? the way we are doing it is just if you equip the weapon, that does the thing for you, right? So you have your class screen basically that shows you all the skills and everything. And then if you use a weapon that scales with faith, right? That is the weapon for a particular class. Now you're leveling into that particular class. So you have a really smooth experience. You don't have to actually go into a menu and change that manually or something. It's just re-equip the weapon, boom, you are that class.
So I gotta, and if you can't answer this in great detail, don't worry about it. But in Final Fantasy Tactics, you would earn XP and you would also earn job points. Right now in Wicked, you earn, XP. And so when I would switch in this system, when I switch my weapon, is my level still my level, or is my level oriented specifically to the class that I'm playing, or is no,
your character stays the same.
Okay.
The only thing that you're leveling into is basically the class itself, right? So in many ways, it's almost like the Elder Scrolls system there.
Okay.
It's kind of similar, right? Like if you use a bow, you're leveling into the bow, that kind of thing.
Okay, that makes a lot of sense. Are you still thinking XP going to be the main source for that additional leveling? Because you've also talked about like skill trees and things like that, like a while ago, and that seems to be a natural connection with what you talked about, the unlocking features. Like, is XP going to be the be all end all, or are you thinking about any other kind of currency that the user grinds to unlock these skills?
Right now in my design, I do have a separate currency for it, but we'll have to see. Like, we still have to put it in, but we'll have to see, right? Because there's cool things that unlocks, right? Because then you can have, and there's another thing that increases how much of this I get. Now I have to choose between XP or SP or something. Right?
Exactly.
That kind of thing. Yeah.
Cool. I'm very much looking forward to what you guys decide. I'm personally rooting. We'll let the commenters say if I'm an idiot. I'm kind of personally rooting for some kind of SP, because I think that allows the grinding of, physical, like I'm getting, stronger by level, and now I can equip this gear, versus like, I'm going to go and these enemies specifically, maybe I get more SP off of those kills. So you find kind of unique and interesting farming routes that.
Right. Ultimately, I think the goal is obviously we want the leveling experience itself, right? And like the leveling into a class to feel really addictive.
Yeah.
That's something that I don't think is necessarily happening with Wicked yet, right? Like with Wicked, you play the game for similar reasons that you play Souls, because the combat is really fun, because of this, because of that, but nobody plays to like, I want to get 32 points in strength or something, right? Like, that's good, and you need that for certain weapons and so on, right? But it's not the most addictive experience, right? But what would be addictive is like, oh my God, look at that fucking class, right? Where he dances and is crazy and has all these abilities and features and so on. And that's what you want to get to. Look at all these, like TG Sid in Final Fantasy Tactics, right? Like that whole, oh my God, these skills and so on, right? Like he literally looks like a Jedi, right? That's what you want to get to, right? That makes it addictive. The whole, look at how this class plays, right? Not, look at these numbers, I could get the same numbers, That's the thing. And I think generally in the industry, it might create an interesting dialogue, which always kind of like is to some degree what we're looking for, right? Because it will, if we're doing it right, it will be confirmed that Yasumi Matsuno fucker was onto something 30 years ago that wasn't, like repeated and copied as much as it should have, but he was right? And I would like to, just as a fan of his work and so on, right, like reconfirm that notion of like, that guy is a genius, and we should have hailed him as like, he is like that, coming up with that system was crazy. And hopefully we can do our best, like our like contribute something to that, like in a huge way, right? But the base of it is obviously inspired by that. But that is interesting, because ultimately it might even affect the Souls games, right? If we make that change and like people are like, oh my God, that system is so much better, then, well, when the next Souls games comes out and still has the same old attribute system, right? And we made that change and made it work, most likely people will also ask for, well, why can't we do a job system similar to this game and so on? And that's the interesting thing. I mean, I do think Miyazaki is thinking in similar terms, right? Because they did try to implement crafting in Elden Ring. But the problem is, like, from what I've seen, is that nobody cared about the crafting system, right? Like, you picked up these little berries and so on, and every now and then you did something, but it didn't really fire, like it didn't really work the way yet, like you'd want it to, right? Like where people go crazy with the crafting system and so on. So all of that is just super fascinating, like just looking at ARPGs and what are they doing and trying to refine that and polish the shit out of it. And ultimately, I think we have an extremely good foundation with what we built. So we just want to see, like, how far can we take this?
Yeah. And y'all recently released a survey looking for like different player feedback. I was really excited to fill it out. I think one of the notes that I put in is that I think No Rest for the Wicked has the potential to make the term a Wicked-like, where a lot of people say like, oh, it's like this game. It's like, just like with Destiny prior to it, people were like, oh, it's like a Borderlands. It's like, well, now it's like, yeah, here's what No Rest for the Wicked. And it really does. Yeah. Looter shooter. It levels this up to a degree. So I think you guys, you have a solid foundation. I'm personally really excited to see more. Timeline wise though, like that's
by the way, let me say something to that
please.
Real quick. So that's the interesting thing, right? Because we've seen a lot of players that have written us, right, that are like, oh, I never got into the Souls games. I find the camera controls too difficult and like too annoying. But because Wicked is like a top-down ARPG, a lot of players that came from Diablo and Path of Exile, right, tried Wicked and actually liked it, right? And so it's really interesting how, we can jump into that and get different players. But ultimately, because of what we're doing, because we're mixing so many things together, right, we are basically creating a new subgenre, right, where I don't think it makes sense to call it a Souls-like, because we're already doing so many things different, right? Like the only thing that is similar to Souls at this point is really, well, we have the attribute system and there's an animation commit combat system, right? That literally also kind of like Monster Hunter uses and so on, right? But other than that, there isn't all that much Souls stuff there anymore. And then in terms of Diablo, we have affixes on the weapons, right? Our enchantments. But then I would also not really call it a Diablo-like, right? I would not call it a Souls-like. I would not call it a Diablo-like. So we're kind of like creating our own new thing, and have to kind of like re-educate the audience a little bit with that, which is difficult. But that's the idea ultimately, right? That we kind of like try to really figure out what is our player base about? What are they playing, right? And that kind of thing, so that we can hone in more on exactly that.
So when those results come in, like what's y'all's process with that? Because like a lot of this is a survey right now. You're already heavily invested in getting ready to release patch number 1 on the breach, I think refined, right? Like if I recall that good. So like with that data, like how do you see, what's your process going to be in terms of compiling it? And then when would we maybe expect to see any kind of like outcome from that? Because like we know that multiplayer is coming. We know the Sanctuary update is generally what's going to follow it, followed by Combat 2.0. And then what I call the gap of we don't know. And then we have 1.0. Like, is this going to be something that you're going to try and slot in another milestone update?
Don't worry about the survey too much, right? Like it's basically just for us for analyzing data. We just like a lot of making an ARPG is just analyzing a shit ton of data constantly, right?
Gotcha.
So it's basically just that we want to know exactly who is our fan base, right? And what are they playing? What are they all about, so that we can serve them better? And it's really mostly about that.
Okay, right? So that basically applies to all the decision making that you guys are working on to kind of help refine your commits, like going with a like an SP system along with XP versus not, and just saying, hey, we're going to make it all XP. Okay, that makes a lot of sense.
Ultimately, we just need to know exactly who's playing Wicked, who's enjoying it the most, right? And then let's make sure that these players who really love Wicked, who contribute, who are part of this whole thing, right, that we just make the best possible experience for them. Yeah. That's the goal.
All right. So speaking of kind of a timeline, I listed off a couple different milestone updates. We're right on the cusp of patch number 1. On Discord, you alluded to, obviously people will be playing multiplayer early, but somebody put out a time frame of September, October, and you kind of said that the multiplayer update should be sooner than that. Is that accurate? Is like, what kind of expectation do you guys have internally for releasing?
No, I said they alluded to the patch 1 will be September, October or something, because now everybody thinks that, every update will take 2 or 3 months and so on, right? And no, that's not the case. Like patch 1 will actually come out pretty soon. Generally speaking, our approach is I do want to stack these updates more, right? Like I don't like that's also another thing that Grinding Gear Games found out pretty early, right? There's a pretty amazing talk by Chris Wilson where he went over like the first 10 years of Path of Exile or something, right? Where they did a similar thing where like early on in Path of Exile, they released updates every week, right? But the problem is, okay, so you have your 0.01% super hardcore fans that play every day, right? And like they will be excited about that, right? Like they follow every single update, etc., right? But then you have a lot of players that play more casually, right? That play like every 2 days or every 3 days or that kind of thing, right? And if you release updates every day, it's almost like, you know, you're not like you're like everything just drip feeds in, right? And you're not ever really super excited about a big thing happening. So the thing that they did, and I think that's good, is that you just really theme it, right? You're just basically saying, look, we are working on, let's say, the breach refined, right? And here's all the fixes that we want to get in, and we're crafting this experience. And we're making sure we're perfecting this. And then we're releasing it as a big update with tons of things for people to look forward to versus, oh, by the way, every day there's a little hotfix, right? Because ultimately that helps us or allows us to market it better, to excite people more, and then for people to really notice the changes in a big splash versus, oh yeah, there's multiple small changes being made every day, and you barely, like, you can't keep up anyway, right? Because if you play the game every 2 or 3 days and there's updates every day, you literally can't follow that, right? So that's the idea, that we basically are looking at, like, for hot fixes, and like if a huge update comes out, there will be hot fixes right away, simply because that's the nature of an ARPG, right? Like you will not get the balance right for every single thing. You will screw up some numbers somewhere, right? That's just in the nature of things because of complexity. But then usually the update range, yes, I do think people should think about like 2-3 months or so. That should be the cadence. That I think gives us enough time to really theme an update, to properly work on it, to polish it, to test it, and then to market it, basically, right? That's the idea.
Yeah, the 2 to 3 months, in my mind, I think the 3 months is that kind of perfect time frame, because it lets other games come out, people can go and check those out, and then you do get that kind of marketing, like, guys, by the way, all these things that we've talked about, you can expect to see that, and then, it gets a lot more people coming back. You get the, you get the content creation and streamers all kicking up, and then that just kind of puts it back into the zeitgeist of everybody's kind of mind. And it's just like another touch point, like, oh, hey guys, this is what we got going on. Speaking on patch 1, you've talked about kind of realm tiers. Now, you said patch 1 is going to be the first iteration of kind of the tiers in which that the realms can be kind of structured. This made sense. We talked a little bit about this back in our first interview, but I think I really liked what you said when you sat down with your son and you had him playing as a high level character, and he was having so much fun that obviously bringing in these options to players. You said this is kind of the first iteration, and kind of teased custom realms would also perhaps be coming down the road. What kind of ideas? Just because a lot of people are like, what does he mean by custom realms? Like, do you have any example ideas of some of the different settings and options?
Let me break it down for you.
Yeah.
So when Breach came out, right, we basically sat down as designers and looked at what are we doing with all this feedback, right? And one of the things that we saw was that, well, there's still a lot of players who are having a ton of trouble, right? And they're having trouble for reasons that we can't do anything about, right? Like there are people that have disabilities and so on, right? And there's people that just, got older, don't want to spend as much time anymore, and don't want to be frustrated constantly, right?
Yeah.
And there has been this whole thing with the Soul series, right? Of like, oh, add an easy mode. Oh no, easy mode would ruin the game and so on, right?
Right.
And then the interesting thing that happened is that Elden Ring basically introduced an easy mode, right? It's just they introduced it in a way that is kind of fluid, right? So what you see in Elden Ring, right, is that, hey, people get out of the tutorial zone and then they go to the first boss and they get their face punched in, right? And some players will stay at that experience, right, and will just repeat it again and again for 50 times until they kill that boss, right?
Right.
But that's the minority. I would say, right? That's not most players. Most players will probably get like, whoa, I'm not dealing a lot of damage here. They probably want me to go somewhere else, explore, level up, find better items, that kind of thing, right? And that's what Elden Ring did because of the way it was built, because they made it open world. And then, that automatically now made it so that if I get stuck at a boss, I can literally go to a separate area and I can level up, I can get better gear, I can do all of that, right? And then once I feel ready, I can go to that boss. And by the way, I can completely overlevel myself in Elden Ring, right? I can get to the boss in a position where it's like, okay, I can kill him now in like 10 hits or something, right? And he's nothing anymore. But that became basically the fluid integration of easy mode for Elden Ring. And I do think there's an interesting thing with like, well, Elden Ring sales, are like 10 times what a normal Souls game sold, right? And I think part of that is clearly accessibility, right? That just it became more accessible to play for a larger range of people. And so I wanted to test that, right? Like I'm usually not a designer who enjoys putting difficulty modes into the game simply because it's difficult, it's a really complex subject to handle, right? And to handle that properly. But at the same time, it's also like you're fighting a losing battle because you never really craft a, one size fits all experience, right? That, hey, every single person can play that. And I did have my experience of like my 7-year-old was playing Zelda constantly, right? And like got good at it. And we actually finished like, I think 6 or 7 Zelda games already, right?
Nice.
And then I had him try No Rest for the Wicked and he got his face punched in, right? Like he just got so frustrated. And then I basically looked at that for like, 15, 20 minutes and he was really, really frustrated, right? And then I was like, hey, you could play with my character. Would you like that, right? And he was like, does it have a big sword, right? Because he liked the big sword. And then I was like, yeah. So then he played with my level 10 character in an early zone and he fucking loved it, right? Like it went from, this is so frustrating, I can play this, to now he doesn't want to play anything else anymore, right? And that was really interesting because that basically probably represents the player base that you have out there as well, right? Where some people, like you will never fix it for all the players and find the right experience for every single person, right? But I do think there's an interesting thing going on with like, okay, what does that mean, right? Like if you play on, like we call it realm tiers, and then there's different paths, right? So we have the Path of Cinders, which is the normal one, the Path of Resolve, which is the easier mode, and then the Path of Torment as well for the players who are already telling us these hotfixes made the game way too simple, and so we are like, well, if you want the difficult experience, there you go, here it is. But then I think the interesting thing on top is also, well, can we vary it, right? Like how does the easy mode vary from normal, so that you still, like, even if you're a really good player, that you would want to try Path of Cinders or Path of Resolve and so on, right? So that's something that we're still looking into. But that is interesting, and that generally should open up Wicked to a whole lot more players, and also like make the fans happy that think that really want a tough experience, make the fans happy that just want the experience that the designers laid out, and made it and get an experience for like, hey, if you want to have an easier time, just follow the story or just play in a relaxed way, right? Then there's also something there for you. That's the idea.
Do you give us the ability to change the realm tier, like after we've formed the realm? So that, let's say you found that it was too easy and later you're like, okay, I'm going to upgrade it. Do you give us that ability, or is a realm locked in and you would just say, go make a new realm?
That's a decision that we're still making right now. Right now in the game, we do allow you that. Like there's a new realm screen basically that we are introducing for multiplayer and so on anyway. This is where you will invite other players. So that's going to be part of the Breach Refined. And then, like right now you can change it. And there is no limit on when you change it or how much and so on, but that is something that we're still discussing.
Are you showing on the UI at all, like what kind of realm tier is being set? That was my one concern, is like you'd have somebody who's like, I'm such a badass, and you're like, oh, you're playing on like I can see you're playing on easy mode, like very, very clearly. I think Final Fantasy 16 did something like that, where they would have these accessories.
You already did that on hardcore, right? If you play hardcore mode, the UI changes a little bit. So yeah, it's
okay, awesome. That's going to be good. On the note, you talked a little bit about the multiplayer because the realm tiers and the kind of the realm selection is coming in. I'm only asking this. I feel like I know the answer, but we do know for a fact that PvP is not coming the day and date with when multiplayer does drop. I try to keep reiterating that because I know there's a handful of people really looking forward to PvP in the game.
From a development perspective, it's best usually what we found out, right? It's best if you cluster it, right? If you're basically saying, look, we're working on one particular thing, which is co-op right now, right? And let's make sure the co-op is just fucking fantastic. And we thought about everything, right? And the problem is always like, okay, so if you also have PvP on top, right, then we have to make sure that all the arenas are done, all the set dressing there is done, all the balance is done, the league is done, right? And so multiplayer in itself is already a difficult release, as you might imagine, right? Like that's already tough to make sure that, well, even the perf is affected by that, because now you're actually rendering 4 players and there's way more enemies and so on, all of that. So we just want to make sure that let's ship the co-op update first. Let's make sure that all the players are happy. And right after that, let's fully focus on the PvP so that, people are happy with that and so on, right? So that it's always like everything that we release is like super high quality. And, if we add another module, you can also expect that to be super high quality.
Would you think of the PvP then kind of like what you're doing now with like the patch that's kind of about to drop, or is that something where you would slot that in with something like the Sacrament update or perhaps the Combat 2.0 update? Like, would you put that into the other milestones that you kind of already defined, or would that be something like, hey, multiplayer's out, okay, we hear you, okay, we're gonna focus in on that before we get to the next kind of milestone?
We'll have to see. I mean, we have our milestone schedule and our milestone plan internally, right? And then we have our presentation layer, which is basically the Wicked Inside, right? Which is basically became our version of a Nintendo Direct, right? And then even with Nintendo Direct, like there's the long form, the Nintendo Direct, and then there's the shorter ones, right? And so with the Breach Refined, we are basically putting out a short form version of that, simply because it makes sense that we put something out and then just have a really clear video that just explains, here's everything that's new in a really simple way, right? We actually try to do it just with a trailer, but it's like, okay, wait, there's some concepts in there that are pretty difficult to understand. Like, for example, gem extraction, right? Like we now made a really interesting thing happening where we allow you to extract gems, but if you extract the gem, the weapon breaks, but not on common and masterpiece items. So that's interesting. So that's interesting. So now if you have, if you have these weapons, then, like it makes them unique in some way. And that is really difficult to explain in just a little cinematic video, right? Like, so you need some voiceover for that to explain that. So that's basically why we made that choice.
That's great. I love that because I think your Wicked Inside going into the Breach update was really refreshing because and we all know why you went into it in the Wicked Inside with going to be private, Take Two and Private Division. That whole thing just caused, all kinds of problems. Now that's all behind us. And I was like, y'all did the Wicked Inside. I was like, yes, having that time, whether it's, every, couple of months, it is a really good check-in to also provide context to the decisions, to be able to explain, because at the end of the day, it's like, y'all aren't doing this willy nilly. This is what people are saying. This is what we've heard. And it does make me as somebody who's been a purveyor of that feedback, like, oh yeah, let's go. This is I'm really looking forward.
You will see, by the way, more of us that way, right? Like right now, like the way it unfolded was like right now you're seeing a lot of my ugly face, right? When we do presentations and so on. But we have such incredible talent, right? And what I would love to see is just more of our developers and that talent being out there, right? So we're already preparing stuff where they actually get to be on the forefront. Like, hey, let's hear from the story department. Let's hear from our insanely talented animators and so on, right?
I follow all y'all's animators on X, and so that's the thing. I see them posting various animations, so this would give me more people to stalk online to be like, all right, what are they saying?
And I think that is super fucking cool. Like we already have a little behind the scenes video now of that our cinematic animators put together, right? And we literally have people there that, worked at Disney with Glenn Keane and so on. And like just seeing how are they animating and what goes into animation, right? Like, cause we do keyframe animation for every single thing. We don't do the cheap, mocap thing that the entire industry does, right? It's literally like we animate the same way that Disney animated, a long time ago, right? Like where every single thing gets hand keyframed. And that gives you that feeling of like, hey, our cinematics are on a level where I think, like brevity is really important for us, right? So that even if you just have a 2-minute cinematic or something, a lot has to come across in that, right? Like a lot more than what the characters are saying, right? Just in the way they look, their body language and so on, right? And that is way easier to get in keyframe animation. But it's an insanely elaborate process. Like it costs us so much to do that, right? But at the same time, it's something that we believe in, that we always believed in. I'm a huge fan of animation. Like I have the, Illusion of Life Bible here and so on, read it many times. And I'm not a huge fan of what motion capture has done in this industry for us, right? And I just hate to see, like how the industry kind of like went all motion capture, and basically as keyframe animators, there's not that many things for you to do anymore, right? So
They went too Hollywood, in my opinion, like, because you see, like, they bring in big actors, they bring in their likeness into the games itself, and there's some interesting aspects to it. But I do agree that
it's just a problem. Like all the studios now are set up that way, right? And like what that also means is that, well, if you do motion capture, it means, well, you're doing all realistic stuff, right? And that constrains you in many ways, right? Where it's just, well, if you do motion capture, then you're probably animating humans, right? So here's your first constraint. And then also, well, the humans can only do what humans can do, right? But then in Wicked, we wanted to have, no, I want to do super cool fucking triple somersaults where then I slam my weapon into the ground and so on, right? That kind of thing. And you literally could not do that with motion capture, right? Or you would have to have some crazy rig and then it might look floaty and so on. That's the thing that's fucking crazy, that you have all these AAA productions where it's like, this cost $1 billion. But then you look at the animation, and it's like, this costs $100K, right? Like this, it looks like that. It doesn't look like, because if you want that kind of animation quality, you would also have to go keyframe and, go nuts with it. But yeah, I just think there's some issues there, right? With just what you can get out of keyframe animation is just huge, right? Like we even use it for combat all the time. One of the reasons why combat in Wicked feels so good is because we're doing all the stuff, look, with squash and stretch
game.
and
yeah,
exactly. It's a fighting game, right? Like so that, like your arm actually extends that little bit, right? And because that's there, it feels so much juicier, right? Like that you see that fluidity of like, that thing. And yeah, I would like to see more of that. Like really let's celebrate keyframe animation, because that, if you use it right, it elevates your game to a different level.
Mm-hmm. Now, one thing I got wrong about your last Wicked Inside, you did obviously the trailer for The Breach, and there was a scene with a horn, and for some reason my brain went right to pipes, and I got excited. I was like, pipes, we're confirming pipes. And I had, so thankfully, I think it was Morgath who actually was like, I've been playing, dude. There's no pipes aren't in here. So my question is, do we have an ETA on when we might be smoking some pipes in No Rest of the Wicked?
We're planning that. We're planning that with the combat update. The interesting pipes is that we actually need to do a change to our ratings, right? Because tobacco, alcohol,
that
kind of thing. So, and we just generally, like if you look at offhands, right now we literally only have shields in there and bows, and that's it, right? Like torches. I want a lot more variety there, right? Like and torches, but I want a lot more variety there, right? I want literally like, hey, you have characters where you hold a tome in the left hand, right? And orbs and like tons of things, right? So that's a big thing that we're planning, and we basically just have to fully design out. I already have all the models and all the stuff is already there, right? We just need to make sure that, well, all of that stuff is properly integrated and feels good. But yeah, that stuff is obviously coming. Obviously, I'm a huge pipe proponent, right? But I just like what this stuff can do to even classes, right? That hey, if I play sword and board, right? Like typical sword with shield, well, that plays one way. But if I play sword and orb, then now my class feels really different, right? That's super interesting.
Yeah, that is super interesting. Oh, man, we're already at an hour, so I don't want to take up too much of your time. But I do have like a one good. Okay, good. I was like, I keep talking all day. The one question that was brought up, and I saw this in the comments, and feel free to, if you can't comment on it, that's fine. But several people have made mention because you've already brought it up, like no MTX, like from a game design perspective, you're about making a game, probably making expansions or something along those lines to the game. But one of the things that people have been pointing out to me is that in the Breach update, the EULA got updated to talk about subscriptions. Now, mathematically, my mind goes, I wonder if that's going to be tied to like all these multiplayer realms if they decide to have any kind of thing where it's like, okay, I want to have, like, for example, if I was going to have a Minecraft server, I have to go pay to have that hosted, and it allows for 100 people to connect or something like that. Like, is that something that might be in the business plan down the road, or is this just lawyers covering your butts?
The way these EULA updates happen is you give that thing to a lawyer, they send it back to you and tell you, put this in, there you go, right?
Okay, cool.
It's not something that we've discussed. It's not something that is on our plan or something. Obviously, maybe we'll do something in the future along those lines. We don't know yet, right? Like if you look at last Epoch, they had this whole thing with like, oh my God, everybody wanted authoritative service, and that comes with a huge cost, right? That's something that we had discussed at some point, right? That, hey, if we get the same feedback and people at some point want authoritative service, which let's see, right? Because our multiplayer works very differently than other games, then yes, we would somehow need to see kind of like, how do we solve those costs? But yeah, the EULA thing, I did get some angry messages from people, but I'm like, dude, I literally didn't even read it. I don't know. Like we have lawyers obviously that send us this stuff, right? That make sure that, hey, we are
CYA cover your ass,
secured and so on.
Yeah.
But I mean, yeah.
Okay, cool. I figured as much. As like, my thought was like, well, the only way like I could see it playing out would be within realms, because the realm is online. I can be offline. Somebody can jump into my realm. You've talked about that in terms of multiplayer, about players actually being citizens of a realm. And if they get vote kicked out of a realm, they get a copy of that realm. Like, I think that's a really unique system. My concern is that, especially as a content creator and somebody like when I stream the game, I love to be the idea of just being able to play with people who are hanging out on the stream. And I think what you've explained with realms and multiplayer sounds maybe somewhat that's going to be kind of prohibitive. There's going to have to be a lot more, coordination behind that aspect. Have you all thought of any kind of, system in terms of the multiplayer realms? Like the only way I could describe it is like, if you remember the old arcades where you put your quarter on the machine and it was like a waiting line to be able to jump in and play the next round or whatever.
But what is it that you want to achieve? You want to play with people from your stream, correct?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And within the realm citizen mindset, all of a sudden it's like that, it becomes kind of complex.
So the thing that we had discussed was basically like either you invite citizens or you invite guests, right? And based on that, the permissions could change. Like, so with guests, basically, well, the whole idea is they can't sell stuff from your vendors and so on, right? And they can't buy houses and screw up your realm, right? Yeah. But they're also just also just guests. They're not really playing on your realm natively now, right? But if you invite a citizen, they have the same exact rights as you, right? Like they are citizens now of the realm. But ultimately, you have to be careful who you invite to your realm, right? Because if you invite somebody who does a bunch of crazy stuff that you don't want, well, I'm sorry, but you made that choice, right? It's like giving somebody the password to your computer, right? Like it's just, hey, be careful who you invite to your stuff.
That was a choice that you made. Yeah. That's good to know, because that's one of the things that, like, I was like, I don't know how they're gonna handle that, because like I always like to be like, hey guys, yeah, we got an open spot, jump in, let's have some fun. So the fact that I can invite them in as guests is going to be really great.
The streamer stuff, you just generally, like, if you have questions, like we always kind of like did things for streamers that helps them, right? That we don't necessarily think of immediately. For Scissoran, for example, right? He was teaching me about, hey, when we are streamers, we want to have music just playing in the background,
I
right?
heard
and
that
I'm
interview.
like,
I was like, yes.
I did not even fucking think about that. So thank you, right? So let's do it, right? But you guys will just have to keep me updated, because a lot of times I'm like, I wouldn't think of that immediately, right? But if a streamer tells me they need a certain thing, then cool. We can.
I'm so glad he brought that music thing up, because it's very true. It's one of the annoying things that I've run into when I was playing Final Fantasy 11 or 14. It's like they have this just great music, and then in some points there's just no music playing, and it's like, well, I guess I'll turn up just some general background music. So I'm looking forward to that update. Do you have an ETA on that? Like when we might be able to expect that music always on a loop setting?
I think that's already in now for the Breach Refined, but don't quote me on that. I'll check for you if that's already there.
Cool, thanks. Yeah, it's like I was like, when I think of features, I always put my dev hat on. I'm like, oh man, that's good. That would take me a while, and I don't even know this like all the intricacies. But then I was like, oh, with a keep looping music, I was like, oh, that'd be a nice little setting. I don't think that's going to be overly too complex to implement. We talked about the job system.
We could talk about some other features that are coming, by the way.
I would love to. Right? Yeah. You have the changelog up and rock and rolling.
One big one that we introduced is native utility runes. So there's a really weird thing that happened, right? Like we introduced all these runes that we thought, hey, they're cool, but they're not really like runes that are very class specific or anything, right? Like heal, for example. Oh my god, this was a huge thing.
The illuminate spell that I actually was like, I would like a little pet that follows me around that makes light. And you're like the illuminate spell is like, man, I completely missed that one. I use that all the time now. But anyway, you were saying.
Yeah. But the problem is with the current utility spells, how it works in our life builds is that you have to slot that into weapons, right? And that's a little weird because if we have stuff like heal aura, right? To a lot of players, it's weird that it's like, wait, I have to slot my heal spell into my weapon, right? But it's like, well, that's how the rune system works, right? So what we did now is that for Breach Refined, you actually have 4 rune like utility slots that just live on your character. They're just right there, always with you, right? And we now start every character with a heal spell. So that's interesting because we got a lot of this feedback, right? That some players are just pissed as hell about, I've played for 20 hours and I still have to eat mushroom soup, right? And I'm like...
Well, and the one thing that's going to help that I've seen from new players is that you fight a boss and you're doing well, but you burn through a lot of your food and then you die. And then it's like, now I got to go either refarm a lot of that food so that I can actually take on the boss, or I just have to hope that I'm not going to need to eat.
We did already have an option in there for you to use a different heal, right? Like we had on Eleanor, there was the heal aura, right? You could buy that, but then there's this whole thing of like, I could buy that, I have to slot it into my weapon, and it's not there from the start, and that automatically creates some resistance, right? So what we did now is, you have your 4 spells that you can always pick. On the controller, we put it on RT, right? So that we move the gesture wheel away to the back button now. And so if you now hold RT and press X, boom, you heal, right? And then, you could put whatever you want in there, right? Like you can have Illuminate there, you can put Damage Surge there, you can put anything you want. And you don't have to, like juggle your weapons anymore, right? Especially also with Illuminate and those kind of things. Those are things that you kind of expect to be more on your character versus on your weapons and so on. So I think that's a really nice change that we made, that you just, like have that freedom from the start. In terms of balance and game design, we allowed that anyway, right? Like we allowed you to either heal through consumables or heal through focus, basically. But we only introduced that later into the game, right? And that kind of like went right over some people's heads, right? That they just missed it. And so I think that'll be really cool. By the way, I mean, another cool thing is we introduced yet another quest for that, right? To just be extremely clear about
that was gonna be my next question, right? I was like, how do you tutorialize that now? Like, is the tutorial updated so that people know they have this other heal?
Yeah, so that's the other thing that hit us with the breach, right? Because we're early access, some of the stuff, like you always have to prioritize certain things, right? And so one thing that usually gets deprioritized a little bit is just tutorialization, right? Like, oh, do we have a thing yet for this and that, right? Because frankly, also, if you look at the Souls games, I mean, they don't tutorialize fucking anything, right? Like literally, I watched Donkey play all of Dark Souls 1, and then literally at the end of the game, he found out, wait, I can upgrade my Estus flask, right? By kindling a bonfire. And it's just, wow, that is one of the core fucking systems of the game, right? And he just never got it because it was never explained, like they never force you into it or anything.
I have the advantage of like when I play and stream, I get chat to help kind of like, because there's so much to your game. I didn't know about like, oh, if I burn torn resources at the bonfires, that I'm not going to be inundated with so many negative things, because I just said, screw it. I'm going to just throw tons of stuff into the fire. And I did. And the boss heals faster than I can damage him. And I was just like, okay, we got to reset this through the Crucible. That's a good lesson. I learned a lesson. But then chat was like, you should burn these. And I love that, because there's this constant, like, I do need those resources because I do want to upgrade this weapon. But then I could also get more resources and also not necessarily have that like grueling difficulty spike that occurred by having all these negative affixes applied to my character for this pestilence zone. So it's, I have that benefit, but the idea of,
but most players do not, right?
Right.
Like most players just have to figure it out by themselves. But that's always the difficulty, right? Like, and with games like Ori, for example, I think we handled the tutorialization pretty well there, but it's a much simpler game, right? Like on Ori, I did all the typical tricks, that game designers have, like, hey, you get double jump, right? And you get double jump in a room that you can only get out of if you use double jump, right? But then, okay, that's great. But in Wicked, I have 500 systems to explain, like how in the world do I create a little content drop for every single one of those features, right? So that's always a thing that we're looking into, right? But with the utility stuff, we are introducing a quest there. And that's also an interesting one, because we set it up in a way that is different to how we did it before. And that opens up a lot of things for later.
What else are you excited about with patch number 1? Because it feels like it's a pretty beefy patch already. Yeah.
So the range gameplay, for example, I can talk about that. I just have my thing there, right? Like, so I saw that with you as well, right? Like you had a bunch of bow builds and so on. And then so basically game design wise, we had that trouble, right? Of like before Breach launched, of like, we're seeing a lot of players just nullifying combat because they're shooting enemies from the distance like that, right? And like they never even get into combat. And by the way, that's a problem that you have in most of these games, right? Like in Dark Souls, you can do the same thing, right? Where it's like, hey, if I shoot an enemy with an arrow, I can kill the enemy before the enemy has the chance to even get to me, right? And then there's no combat anymore, and that basically nullifies that. So we made the choice of, fuck it, it should cost focus, right? Because focus gets you into combat. You have to do combat a little bit, and then you can fire your arrow. The problem is that's just not what players want, right? Like players do not, like they want to follow their fantasy. And the fantasy in their head is, if I'm an archer, I want to shoot my bow constantly. If I'm a spellcaster, I want to just cast my spells, right? And so we had to go in again, right, and basically change that, right? Like, so now I changed the stamina, but we didn't just flip a switch, right? We also looked at, okay, how can we fix that issue, right? So basically what we did for spellcasters is, well, you have some base spells now that, only cost stamina, and they do give you focus gain. So if you fire dart at an enemy, now you will be able to hit the enemy and also gain focus, so that as you fire dart at the enemy, you can then, fire up other spells as well. The thing that we did, though, is we also decreased the range of it, right? And also the damage of it, because we can't give you the same damage output from a spell that only costs stamina that we do on focus, because that would break the game. And so we did that. We did the range thing, and that kind of made it work, right? And then for bows, what we did was pretty intuitive, that we just have you draw the bow for a little longer, and you get this nice little laser pointer, right? Where at first, like, you have a little bit of a crooked trajectory, and then as you hold it, it becomes stronger and stronger. Then, bam, you fire it off, and it feels really good, right?
Especially because it locks you in place too. So, because you got to be the challenge with ranged combat is always that risk versus reward. If it's, you have an added advantage that the enemy can't, or more generally can't get to you as quickly, but what's that balance? Because if it's just OP, because like somebody was asking in the Discord chat, and I responded to him talking about like they were struggling with Echo Knight, and I was like, oh, like I know that I haven't fought him yet in the Breach update. I've been doing all the other stuff, but in the previous one, I felt like he melted pretty easily with my bow build, because I was just able to constantly keep putting out damage. But the Echo Knight has a lot of advantages because he can do ranged, he can close that gap really quickly, and not every enemy has that. So I'm personally really excited about the magic change and the range change with the Breach Refined, because I miss it. Like I was like, I do feel restricted. It does feel like somewhat punishing.
Yes, that's the feedback that we got, right? Like ultimately it was made, like that change was made for a good reason, but it conflicted with the fantasy that people have, right? And we can't kill the fantasy. If people want to play an archer, they want to play a certain way, and we just have to manage around that, right? And obviously, like just making it like focus-based, I think was the wrong decision ultimately. But now I think it's interesting, like how will people react to that, right? Because we went the extra mile on just making sure that that stuff actually feels fun and feels good and is done in a way where it doesn't break the game.
Yeah. Also, I think that that's probably the first time stamina was pronounced correctly on this channel by you. So it's like people in the comments are always like, I was like, wow, my brain's broken, guys. I don't know why, but I fail at that.
You should do a fun thing where if you type your username into the thing, that it automatically changes stamina.
Oh, dude, that's funny. That would be a fun Easter egg.
That would be really funny. Yeah.
Anything else that people are like that you're really excited?
It'd also be funny to have Asmongold, and then you can only pick bald.
Dude, let's please make that happen. Oh my goodness, because while he probably is not going to see this specific video, I would die for that reaction that he would on his stream. Like if you do that, I won't tell anybody. Whisper me, and then I'll like when he's going to stream it again, I'll be there just to kind of witness that moment, which would be so freaking funny. That would be kind of wild. It runs the risk of like you get this concept of like streamer privilege, you know, and it's like I get that from gamers, because it's like I always want to say like I get that I have this added advantage because I am live and people show up. However, like there is the sense that people do like it has this visibility. Like y'all teaming up with Asmongold, I was thrilled by, because I was like, yes, more people see this game, more people are going to be checking it out. The best news is it's an incredible game. So it's not like, hey, I got this, like a certain game just came out and streamers are having like, hey, I was contracted to play this game. They canceled it because the game isn't, it turns out really struggling.
That's just generally this problem right now, that everybody turns everything political, right? And automatically, if you have like, you know, Asmongold likes your game and he wants to stream it or something, right? And you're like, of course, you know, why wouldn't we entertain that and love that, right? Because frankly, he is one of the most popular streamers out there. And if he enjoys playing the Rest for the Wicked, we're thrilled, right? Because we want as many people to play Wicked as possible. That doesn't mean I agree with every single political opinion that he has and so on. And frankly, I don't care, right? Like this, I don't get why, you know, how life has changed, that everything has become about politics.
The all or nothing is something that I it's just like, all right, like reasonable people can disagree. Like, and honestly, I think within gaming, outside of politics, because let's just avoid all of the politics, gaming in and of itself is about the discussion. It's about coming together and saying like what we liked and what we didn't. But even in gaming, beyond politics, you do get this kind of like there is this movement of like, no, you can't talk about this idea because the devs might hear it and they'll ruin my experience. It's like, dude, relax.
That's one of the things when I was at Blizzard that Mike Morhaime was always talking about, right? That one of the things that we always underestimate is like how powerful games are in just making people come together, right? Because when you play a game, you like, and I had this many times when I played World of Warcraft or Diablo and so on, right? That you're playing with a bunch of people, or StarCraft and so on, right? You're playing with a bunch of people and you really enjoy playing with them and you really like them, right? And then you don't care about their personal politics or any of the shit, right?
Correct.
You just play a game together and you just enjoy each other, right? And there's something really powerful about that, because in these days, right, like everybody is always kind of like so offended about everything and this and that, right? And I think there's a powerful thing in gaming where you can really make people just play together and enjoy one another, and all the other shit doesn't matter, right? Like,
I think that's
you
why
have a good
gaming
time
has been
together,
targeted, though.
that's huge.
Yeah, I think that's one of the reasons why gaming has become that battleground, because of that fact, because it is a unifying thing. Gaming, I think, is this universal human language, and yeah, it's like I've always felt like gaming was always this like it brings people together. Like, yeah, we can disagree on whatever, but we're still like, you know, together we're fighting this dragon and we're gonna,
you're
you know,
still an RPG party, right?
Yeah.
Like, you're still my buddy, you know, like, so that's what it's all about, right? Like the humanity of it, and not the whole let's bring real world shit into this. Nobody cares. Like, if you're having a good time, have a good time, have a blast.
Absolutely. What other things are you really excited for people to go hands on with the Breach Refine? Because like again, I can't. I wish I had I wish I had your changelog because it's like I've been tracking it, and it's like I've already forgot. Like I forgot about the gym thing, but I know I've talked about it. I know I was looking forward to it, and it wasn't until you said that. Oh yeah, we can reslot gyms. I was like, that's right, that is in patch 1. Oh my gosh, let's freaking go! I'm really thrilled for that.
One of there's a couple of like also just quality of life things, right? So for example, ledge protection. That was something that
as a hardcore player, like I've been, ledge protection. I've been very nervous about using skills.
So I actually, right before Breach launched, right, I jumped into our Discord and asked our Discord players, like, what do you think about ledge protection? Should we have that, right? And like vehemently, the Discord, like all our users were like, no, if players are being stupid, then they should fall to their death, right? And ultimately, what we are seeing is, well, there's a ton of players that are frustrated with Crucible, right? So that's one thing that we're trying now, where it's like, hey, if you do a rune attack, like a dash or something, add a ledge, we will not kick you off the ledge anymore, right? And let's see how that does.
That's something I wouldn't mind seeing as a setting within like the custom realms later. Is that way I can be like, man, all right.
That's what was just in my head, that you asked about the custom realms before, and we kind of like skimmed over that, right? So for custom realms, the thing that I really love, the idea is just generally players being able to create their own experience, right? And that could go from things like, the hardcore realm, for example, is in many ways a custom realm, right? Is a custom action that you put on your realm. But that could go in many ways, right? Like that could also be, okay, what happens? What is your punishment when you die, right? Or other ways, like when you want to play a multiplayer server, right? Like maybe you want to do something crazy, right? And, change the values and like just experience Wicked in a completely different way, right? And challenge yourself, or just change the value so you have a fully new experience and so on.
Give us the ability to share those customs out, by the way. Like if there's a way that I either click a link and you can like import all my settings, or that would be massive, because then you could end up seeing just communities build up around crazy rule sets. Like, oh, you want to
exactly.
It's like, here you go.
Yeah, I think that's a really good idea. So that it's just, hey, I play by the Ginger Prime rules and it's really fun,
Hopefully.
So that thing, but basically the ledge protection we talked about, then fall damage, for example. So fall damage, I just tweaked to a point where I felt like, hey, this is okay, right? It deals X amount of damage. So I tweaked it now so that you still die at a certain point, right? Like, because otherwise you kill progression and so on. But then when you're not quite at that point yet, well, I basically softened it, right? So we don't have to take off half your health or even more. Because before we had a really simple algorithm, right? That just looked at, okay, so here's where fall damage starts, here's where fall damage ends, right? If you're at the point where it ends, you lose 100% health, right? And then before that, it just basically takes a percentage, right? So at 50%, yes, you lose 50% of your health, right? So we just tweaked that now, and now it's actually quite nice, right? Like now you can do things like, hey, I jump from Sacrament down to, like from Sacrament, where the Taylor sisters are, Mira and Mary, right? Down to the bottom, and I don't lose health anymore, and so on. And it's nice, it's fine, right? Like we don't need to drain your health as aggressively as before. And I think that will already be quite nice for people, that they just have that feeling of like having more freedom now and not getting punished all the time.
I'm gonna go ahead and test that out, because like my first hardcore death came to getting pushed off a ledge, and then I was like, at first I was like, oh, I'm gonna just fall.
Saw that in Orban Clades. Yeah.
I was like, I thought I was like, oh, I'll just fall down to the net, and then he's like, I completely missed that and fell all the way down, and I was like, oh my gosh, that was so satisfying though. Like I have to say, like one of the things that I tell people, I like starting all my builds in hardcore mode just to see how long I can go. But there's like, it's a whole different approach, because as soon as then I'm not in hardcore mode, then I'm like, I play Wicked like way more aggressively. And,
way differently,
yeah. And it's like the ledge protection, I think, is going to be really helpful, because there's just this natural nervousness, especially if I've like, oh, am I pressing the right button? In terms of my skill, like, oh, X, there was a dash to that. And there's been many times, even still, like on hard, like I have fallen, but I didn't die. but I was like, oh no, this is it. Okay. We're still here, guys.
Or you die as like the frustrating ones are always like where the fall damage was like enough for that when you fell, an enemy was standing right there where you fell, and that just hits you on the head, and it's like, okay, now it's done. Like
I'm
like
fine with that.
You have that moment of like, yes, I survived. No, I'm dead.
Yeah, I'm fine with that because like I do get frustrated when games like that you can fall from any height and there's no penalty. There's nothing like, oh, I'm Superman. I can literally just fall from it whenever. But it's that, yeah, like, okay, enemies are still mad at you and they're gonna still chase you. Like, oh no, I survived, and then you're like have to figure if you scramble or whatnot.
By the way, another thing that we could bring up is the gathering. I mean, by the way,
okay. XP's coming to gathering, right?
Yeah, so the gathering in general is something that I wanted to look at because I saw, for example, how Rex was playing the game, right? Rex Santarex. And I think what I saw in his playstyle, right, was that he was bored by the gathering, and it was never supposed to be something where it's like, oh, this should feel as fun as the combat, right? To me, it was more like, this is more the relaxing thing, right? Like, hey, I see a tree, I hold the button, I see the cool animations, and then I pick up the thing and so on. So, but ultimately with this now, what we added was we started with, can we add a little bit more juice to it, right? Like what happens if I hit the button, like the interact button, the moment the tool hits the resource and I get a little bit extra juice, right?
Ooh, okay.
What happens then? And so we did that now. And so we even increased ranges, right? So we're rating you now on like how well you're doing with that. And it's really interesting because it basically like if you're a good player, a copper X could be as good as an iron X and so on, right? That kind of thing. And it's just really fun. It feels really juicy. Like you hit the button at the right moment, and then bam, you see the health bar of the tree go all the way down, right?
And then you don't also have to. So it's like if you're like, like you want to participate in that, you get the bonus for participating in it as opposed to like
get it.
Yeah,
exactly. But you don't have to. You can still just hold the button and you're fine, right? Like it will do what it did before. But if you hit the button at the right moment again, then you get the extra juice. And then we went even further, right? Okay. We were like, okay, what can we do on top, right? Like, what if I just give you focus every single time you hit a resource, right? So that you literally get something, right? For like, hey, so here's our layout, right? Here's a map, and then here's all these enemies, right? But wouldn't it be cool if the gathering system would also interact with the enemy system in some way, right? With the combat system, because now I get a little bit extra, right? Like if I cut down these trees or mine these ore veins, I can basically prep myself up for the next combat encounter, right? Because I get the extra focus. And that's cool. And then we went even further and we're like, dude, at this point, we could just treat any like resources as enemies and just give you XP from them as well, right? So that whenever you farm trees and ore and so on, that kind of thing, you get a little bit of XP as well. And by the way, that then opens up the thing, because I wanted to make that change, by the way, for quite some time already. And that opens up the possibility of also, like, if I want to play just a farmer in Wicked, right? Like if I have my little brother or wife or something, and she doesn't enjoy the combat but wants to just play Wicked as if it's SimCity or something and make a whole bunch of money in Sacrament with non-combat tasks or something, right? That opens all the possibilities, because now you could actually spend time on your farm and just level up that way, right? And get a bunch of stuff that way.
I had a friend in New World who literally just did that. He just crafted and gathered and got all the way to level cap. And I was like, yeah, exactly. Like, it's not efficient.
That's what I want to get to. That if you want to be, especially if you're playing multiplayer and you want to become the lumberjack of the town or something, right? Cool. Let's allow you to do that, right? And with these kind of systems, we can get to that. I don't want to go too crazy with this stuff, because we're already kind of like overlapping a little bit into what I'll have to say for the Wicked Inside.
Okay.
So I want to still leave some stuff there, but there's just a shit ton of stuff coming. And mostly Breach Refined is what it states, right? It's basically like, here's all the Breach content, but by the way, we listen to all the community feedback and we just refine and polish the shit out of it, right? Like we added all these new features, we added new ways of playing the game, we polished everything and so on. So, and basically set us up in a really good way for then the next big content update, which is co-op.
Yeah. And man, I tell you, this is going to be a really exciting year. Like I think you started off strong with the Breach update. You very well know, like there's a big portion, like when you put out like, hey, like what's going to get people in and buying the game and checking it out. And I was like, a lot of people are like multiplayer. I see it all the time in my comments. They're like, me and my guys, we're ready to go. As soon as they drop multiplayer, let me know. And we're there. And I was like, great. Yeah. I can't wait to share that news with you guys. So I think all in all, like this is going to be a really good year, hopefully for Moon Studios. I know you guys are putting in a lot of work, and I hope that you feel that the excitement that the community has for every update and every, message that you guys drop in the Discord. And I honestly think your idea, especially about introducing more of your team to kind of highlight different aspects of the game, that's going to also go over real well with the Wicked Insights going forward. So that's going to be a lot of fun. But is there anything else you want to share before we wrap up for the day? Because I got family duties to handle.
I think we're good. We already had like 1.5 hours. So I think there's a lot of cool nuggets that people get from this that they haven't heard before. So yeah, should be pretty cool. We have the update coming out pretty soon now. And yeah, I can't wait to just share it with people because I've been playing it already. Like I've already maxed out 4 characters on this build. And it's super fucking fun, right? Like to me, it's already like we're in a pretty good spot. And even for the future, I'm still incredibly excited for what's to come.
Me too. And thank you so much again for your time. And thank you so much for this amazing game. And outside of that, I'm going to let you get back to getting some rest or work done, whatever you have planned for the rest of your day. So thank you, Thomas. And thanks everybody.
It's only midnight now. I still have my 2, 3, 4 hours of work now.
Oh, you're a stronger man than me. I tap out at 10 o'clock. That's why it's like, you never see me stream late into the night. People are like, why do you stream at 4:30 in the morning? It's like, cause I'm awake and my kids aren't.
Right.
At 9 o'clock at night. Like I'm just like, I just want to sit down and play. Like you, before we go, you mentioned the crafting system. I just started, or the gathering system. I just started playing Super Mario RPG. They remastered it for the Switch. So I picked it up on Switch too. Exactly like that. Like you press a button at the right time and it's so satisfying. It has this real good feel like, oh, I'm doing really good things here, and you get a benefit from it. So that's the thing I thought of. Anyway, outside of that, I'm going to end the recording and wish everybody very much the best.
Well, thanks for having me, Brian.
Absolutely, Thomas. You have a good one.
You too. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Lord, ain't no saving, no safe ground. Just crack those spores and battlegrounds. Lord, every stumble carves a name. Light that torch and stake your claim.